it, Matt Chapman.
Olsen skies one high and deep to right field toward the corner of Dell. Onto the track near the wall, leaps up and got it. Makes the catch for out number 3. Olsen. On he goes. Which is hit out towards center field. That's smoke. That is going to be into the bushes. A 2-run home run for McCutchen. And the Phillies take a 2-0 lead.
Here's another 3-2 going again as Soto hits one high in the air, right center field. Brinson near the wall, leaps, and he makes the catch! Lewis Brinson makes an unbelievable catch over the wall in center field.
That's right. I'm here. How about that? All right. Welcome in to this edition of the Belly Up Fantasy Live baseball show. Of course, I am your host, Kevin. And joining me, as per always, is the right-hand man, the man who hosts the Sports Stove podcast that's seen throughout the United States and perhaps the world. Of course, I'm talking about Vince. Vince, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Kevin. How about yourself?
I'm here, so it was a struggle there for a minute, but I'm on. So life is good. And joining us after a 1-week hiatus is, of course, our Belly Up baseball department head, and of course, I'm talking about Dan D'Amico. Dan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, and this last week I've actually found myself watching spring training games for I think the first time ever. And I don't think I've ever been this excited to watch spring baseball.
It's been a lot of fun just turning on and seeing baseball and the sunshine and everything else. And so, as we're all aware, now we are less than 2 weeks away from opening day, which is April 7th. And so, given the last week that's gone on in Major League Baseball, Vince, is there anything that's happened that stands out to you this week?
Yeah, Andrew McCutchen hit 2 home runs in 1 game for the Brewers. So there's life going on in Milwaukee. So that's what stands out to me. Other than that, it's guys getting injured, guys staying healthy, gearing things up for the season. And at this point, it's just fingers crossed nobody major goes down between now and the start of the season.
Well, that's for sure, and that's got to be one of the concerns, is because it's so compacted. And one of the players that we could mention is, of course, Molina, going into his final season. Won't start his spring training, I've heard, till tomorrow. He'll make his first appearance, so that's got to impact him. And so, Dan, any news that's out there that's floating around that you're like, wow, we got to talk about that?
Well, word came out today that the Cardinals could bring in Albert Pujols.
I saw that.
Wouldn't that
Actually,
be a story? Pujols and Molina riding off to the sunset with the Cardinals together. Pujols getting the shot to maybe hit 700 home runs. And Nick Castellanos made his Phillies spring training debut today, so it was good to see him in the red pinstripes, and Bryce Harper hit 2 home runs. So 2 Phillies, one former Philly, and 1 MVP doing damage today.
Okay, so we like it when our teams do damage, not so much when we get damaged. And Vince, one of the high-profile players that is not being affected so far that I was reading about is Mr. Conforto of the New York Mets. He is currently unsigned, and so he turned down, of course, the Mets offered him a 1-year, the deal where, you accept it and you stay with the team. He turned that down. He's out on the street, and you've got, if someone were to sign him, they'd lose a draft pick. So I see him continuing to be on the streets. Is there any team that you think that could use Conforto? Is he down the drain, or has he still got something he can add?
I mean, for a draft pick, no. You got teams like Miami that, what could they lose? It's it depends on what their strategy is. They've split with Jeter in the offseason, so maybe they're actually going to try to win now. I'm not sure. But maybe a team like that. But honestly, I mean, no, I don't see any use for him. Washington, Miami, those sorts of teams, maybe. But I don't know that he would want to do that either. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he should have stayed in New York. He would have got $18 million. Now he's got exactly zero, same amount as the three of us have. So, that's the player that stood out to me that doesn't have a job. Is there any player, Dan, that you could see that's still out there that you're like, wow, he's still unsigned?
Yeah, Conforto's the big one, and Castellanos before last weekend was a name that I was shocked was still out there. He hit over 300 last year, hit 30 plus home runs. Guy that's really just a professional hitter, and with everyone getting the DH, I think everyone was expecting people to just line up for him, and the fact that there wasn't allowed the Phillies to go in and get him. So I'm not complaining that no one was really breaking down his door to sign him to a big deal, but I'm very glad that Dave Dombrowski was able to convince John Middleton to go over luxury tax and sign another big bat for the Phillies.
Yeah, so because you weren't on last week, Dan, and so we didn't get a chance to talk to you about this. Vince and I talked about it as far as it seems like there are 900 hitters on Philadelphia, exactly 0 fielders, and so does that concern you at all?
Well, the defense, it can't be that much worse. I mean, Andrew McCutchen wasn't an all-star out and wasn't a Gold Glover out in left field. But now you're getting, Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos is bad out there. It's going to be frustrating. Some nights there are going to be nights where they commit, 3 errors and boos are going to be raining down in Citizens Bank Park. But then one of them's going to hit a home run and everyone's going to start cheering again. So
is that the kind of thing that you see coming, Dan, is like 7-6, games involving Philadelphia because they don't have a great defense. Their pitching staff is still questionable in my mind. And so do you think that's the way they're going to have to go into the season, knowing that they need to get 7-8 runs to win?
Yeah, the best thing I saw in the past week or so is the Castellanos meme going around. That's a deep drive to left, and it'll make it a 4-0 ball game. But instead of 4-0, they've made it 25-24. There's going to be balls flying out of Citizens Bank Park all year.
It's going to be Philadelphia. It's going to be about maybe 7-3 going into the 6th. And then once the bullpen comes in for Philadelphia, that's when it's going to turn into this massive scoring game. Because the one thing Philadelphia did not do this offseason is upgrade their bullpen. And I just recorded my AL East, NL East preview episode with my dad for our Monday show. And so we talked about Philadelphia bullpen. My goodness, how ugly is that bullpen, Dan?
It can't be worse in 2020. It just can't. It's not possible. It was the second worst bullpen of all time. Corey Knebel looked really good for the Dodgers last year. Hopefully he can at least lock down one spot. And then,
because they tried that because they, if you remember, in the middle of the season, they traded, for the Rangers. And, of course, that didn't work out very well. And they said, beat feet. And so now they're back to a 0-sum game out there. So it's going to be interesting games going on in the NL East. We'll definitely have to check out what Vince and his dad had to say about that. But there's going to be some interesting games going on out there. So that's going to be interesting to see.
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah,
I know Dan knows this, but did you know Philadelphia has a player named Sheriff and a player named Ranger on their team?
I knew about the Ranger Suarez. So I did know about him.
Sheriff's the last name, but he's a relief pitcher in the bullpen. I thought that was interesting.
Okay, so they got the law and order all set out in Philadelphia. So Vince, anything you mentioned Andrew McCutchen? Anything else that's surrounding Milwaukee that stands out so far?
No, not really in Milwaukee, I guess. Pham signed with Cincinnati, which I thought was an interesting signing in the outfield for them. They're so, man, I'm telling you, Cincy's going to be bad this year. But it's interesting. I'm always intrigued by the veterans and where they sign. When you got a guy like Pham who's had okay stats here and there, Cincinnati's going to be a spot where he can hit. I mean, he'll have great opportunity there. And I look at him, Hunter Renfro is a guy. He's at Milwaukee. He's slated in to get the start in the outfield for Milwaukee. I'm not a Hunter Renfro guy, not a Tommy Pham guy. I put them both kind of in the same category when it comes to if I want them on my team or not. They don't excite me either way with it, and I miss Avisal Garcia, who's now in Miami. I miss him in Milwaukee already, and the season hasn't even started yet. So, and those kind of role players, they're gonna come throughout the season, and they're gonna move in and out of the lineup and stuff like that. Those guys always intrigued me a little bit, but there's not been, after the big guys signed, the Correa and Story, once they got signed, that's where all the fun is. And now it's just kind of plug and play, and guys that you're not going to really know what it means until we're halfway through the season and see kind of how they're playing this year.
Yeah, one of the things that we didn't know going into the spring training was just how Ronald Acuna was going to work out. And, we're going to be talking later about players that we missed, think we missed when we were ranking them. And Ronald Acuna is going to, because they're saying that he's going to DH by the middle of April. And then by May, he's going to be a full-time player. And so that's got to rocket him up the list. I'm interested to see what you guys think about him. But so that's exciting news, because he's one of the, when you put out players that can, get you to turn on the TV, he's certainly one of them. And so that's going to make, Dan, your Philadelphia, trying to get into the playoff even more difficult, because when you talk about great players, Acuna, Soto, guys like that are always in the conversation. So I'm excited to see that he's back, and he's going to be back sooner than probably thought. So since you're in the NL East, Dan, how do you think that's going to affect the division?
Well, I mean, he's a fantastic player, and you saw the Braves make the playoffs without him, win a World Series without him, and now it's like an off-season signing almost. You just sign one of the most impactful players in the major leagues. Just bring him back to a team that already won a World Series. So him, Juan Soto, it's not fun watching those guys play for the other team. That's the easiest way to say it. Having them be on the other team is not an enjoyable sight, especially when you don't have great bullpen arms to face them late in the game.
So, Vince, what do you think about Acuna?
I'm intrigued. The big question mark with him is how will his base running be limited, stolen bases and things like that with his coming back. He's still a top-tier player, still one of the top guys you go for, but we've been talking about injury, this whole ranking players thing. We've been talking about injuries. We've seen it with Tatis. We've talked about it with DeGrom. They're great players, but they've got to be on the field. And will Acuna come back healthy? Will he play for 2 weeks and all of a sudden, because he's been holding back or whatever, pulls a hamstring or something like that? Like how is that all going to fit in? I'm still a little worried. It depends on where I am in the draft order, where I'm looking at how high I'm looking for him. But I mean, he's still a valuable player. You're still going to take him if you're, in the top, 6, top 8, I don't know, somewhere in that range, maybe.
Yeah, I think that if in our draft, if he's sitting around there in the third round, I think you really got to consider that.
He won't be there in the third round, Kevin.
I had predicted that he'd be gone by the second. So maybe if you're in the back of the second round, something like. But if he, no one pulls the trigger on him by the third, you got to, whether you believe in him or not, you just take him and offer up prayers afterwards, whatever. But you're going to have to take him.
You can't pass Ronald Acuna twice. If you pass on him in the first round and it comes back to your pick in the second round, you got to take him. I mean, there's no question about it.
And you mentioned another player that we didn't know what was going to happen with him. That's DeGrom. He has already been named the Mets starting pitcher for opening day. That is certainly great news for him and for baseball fans. Once again, maybe not so much for Dan, but so we had talked about him and maybe had him. I think we all had him in our top 5 starting pitchers, not knowing if he was going to be healthy. But now knowing that he's the starter for opening day, that's got to put him on the 1 or 2 line, don't you think, yeah?
Well, there's still that question. You never love guys that are coming off years with elbow and arm issues. So he's clearly the best pitcher in baseball when he's healthy. But if he only gives you 20 starts, he still sits around the 4 or 5 for me, because that risk is there that his arm just fails him in June again. And if I'm wrong, someone's going to have a really good pitcher for probably better value than they should have gotten.
The strategy with DeGrom is you draft him, and then you play him for the first 2-3 months, and you trade him. You get the early success in the season, and then you try to you hope that he starts off as hot as he always has, and then you got to decide, okay, do I dump him now, and who can I get for him? What kind of value can I get back for him? If you have a Met fan in your league, you can get DeGrom early, use him early, and then trade him for 2 players that you love. Depending on how emotional the Met fan is, you might be able to turn him into something pretty special for the rest of your playoff run, basically.
Yeah, if you had done that last year before the All-Star game, came around, you would have got a haul, and then he wouldn't have pitched the whole rest of the season. So, yeah, you might be onto something there, Vince.
Yeah.
All right.
Of course I am.
Of course you are. That's right. So today we are going to talk about, because that's the last position we have not talked about on this show, and that is, of course, catchers. And so, when it comes to catchers, they're kind of like the tight end position of baseball. It's hard to get excited about any of them, maybe 1 or 2 guys. And so without further ado, Vince, let's go ahead and.
So again, Kevin, we didn't get a chance to talk before the show, so I did it kind of like we did last week in the setup, just so you're
okay. All right. So now I'm up to speed. So there's our rankings, our top 5. So Dan, why don't you take it away and talk about who you have ranked right here?
Well, Salvador Perez, number 1. I mean, he had 48 home runs last year, record for a catcher, and you probably can't expect him to do that again. His previous career high was 27 home runs, and his previous career high in RBIs was 80, and he knocked in over 120. But if he gets anywhere near that kind of production this year, he'll end up as the top catcher again. Yasmani Grandal is another guy who hits in the middle of a really, really good lineup in Chicago, and he's a switch hitter. So he hits both. He can hit both lefties and righties really well. Yeah, and he walked almost once a game. So for leagues that value on-base percentage or walks, he's a guy that's really he needs to be picked in the top 2 or 3 catchers. Will Smith is a guy that I think is overlooked. I kind of talked about him with Muncy when we did first baseman. He's almost overlooked because there's so many stars in the Dodgers lineup, but all he does is hit. He's a really good hitter, and that's pretty valuable for catchers. Guys that can stick a catcher and hit they don't come around much. JT Romito, I think I know I can see Vince has him at number 1. I think he's the clear 4th guy in the top 4 that I saw. I remember when the Phillies got him from the Marlins, everyone was really excited because he was leaving the black hole that was the Marlins park, going to a hitter-friendly park in Citizens Bank. And everyone thought he was going to hit 30 home runs every year, and that hasn't really happened. So he's still a really good offensive catcher, but I don't think he's lived up to the hype of some Phillies fans when they originally acquired him. And I have Adley Rutschman at 5 because I looked at all the other all the other guys that ESPN, Fantasy Pros had in the top 10, and none of them excited me. But Adley Rutschman, number 2 prospect on most websites, is really, really good. And the Orioles are going to lose a lot this year. But why wouldn't you have Adley Rutschman catch 130 games while you're losing, let him win Rookie of the Year, and let him win people some fantasy leagues while he does it?
Oh, Dan, that's interesting that you brought him up, because I don't know about you, Vince. I was just this moment, I was not familiar with him.
Well, your research failed you, Kevin.
Okay, that's it tends to do that sometimes. So
the problem that I have with him is he's not going to start day 1. He's going to be up fast And some are saying June. So you have to get through a couple months with him doing nothing for you. If he comes up earlier than that, then that's great. He's going to be good, especially if you're like a dynasty league, even a keeper league to some degree, depending on how many keepers you have. He's the kind of guy that you take a shot on because of what he can be, and hope that good things happen at the end of the day for him. I like him. I don't know that I like him that high just based off of that. He's not going to, at least from what I've read, he's not going to be there day one. And I'm not willing to wait around for a guy to play, especially if I can't really stash him on the bench. I hate stashing a second catcher that's not going to play at all for me at the same time. But I like the talent. I like the swing. Hear from you, Dan. I don't fault you for having him at 5. I'm too scared to have him at 5.
Let's just say he should be playing day one. He's certainly the best catcher the Orioles have.
Yeah. I agree with that.
All right, so count yours down.
All right, so I do have Romito first. He's one of those guys that has underperformed, but I think there are 2 Philly batters that will benefit the most from adding Schwarber and Castellanos to the team, and I think it's JT and I think it's Segura. And right now they've got JT batting 4th. I think that where he is in the lineup bolsters him this year. Perez would be the obvious number 1. I'm down on Perez this year. He's still going to be a very good catcher, still going to be, in my opinion, a top 2 catcher in fantasy baseball. He's a guy that, he bats 3rd, JT bats 4th. Contreras bats high in the order also, which is why I have him at number 3 for the Cubs. I think these top 4 guys, Will Smith's my number 4. I think all of them are number 1 catchers personally. And I think that if you have one of those 4, you're going to be doing okay at the catcher position. Again, Contreras is going to get a lot of plate appearances this year, which is making him more valuable this year as well. And then I've got Keibert Ruiz there at Washington. And again, it comes down to where he's batting. He's batting 5th. He's going to get plate appearances. Washington is not a great team. Washington may be one of the worst teams in the league this year. They won't be worse than Baltimore. But I think that Ruiz is when I look at these, and we'll talk about it when we get to 6 through 10 too, but Ruiz, to me, is similar to the situation in Baltimore, where I'm willing to take a swing on this guy just based off of plate appearances and kind of banking that he's going to, with opportunity, will come some results.
Sounds good. And so when it comes to catchers and the guys that are in our league, the answer to the question is yes, you have to have at least 1 catcher on your team. Okay, so let's get that out of the way right out of the bat. So you can't leave the catcher spot completely open. You got to select someone. But anyways, besides that, I've got Perez at number 1, and I'm under no illusion that he's going to have a season like he did a year ago. That's not going to happen. But the thing that really made me put him at number 1 more than anything else, you realize that last year he played 161 games. So, he's either the catcher or he's in the DH spot. So he's in the lineup every single day. And to me, that's what you're looking for when you have a catcher, is somebody that you could stash in your lineup that will just leave him there. And you don't have to, move in some guy that's batting 190 into your catcher spot because the guy's taking the day off. But so Perez is my number 1. Will Smith, I think, is going to be a guy that, with the DH, he's going to be in the Dodgers lineup a lot. In the Dodgers lineup, as we all know, especially with Matt Muncy being full speed ahead when it comes to opening day, their lineup is stacked, and he hits, I believe it's 5th in their lineup. And so that's going to be great for him. And he's only 27, so you got to like him. Romito, he's been one of the great, offensive catchers going back a few years now. And he played 134 games. He's 31. I think that can continue. And then I got Wilson Contreras at number 4, playing for the Cubs. The Cubs don't excite me a whole lot, but he is one of their established guys, so he's going to be in their lineup a lot. And so, and then we get to Yasmani Grandal. I kind of put him up there begrudgingly because last year he was not healthy. He only played in 93 games. He's 33 years old. And if, and that's a big if, he plays a whole season, I like the White Sox lineup, but there's too many questions about whether he's going to be there every day. And so if I'm drafting and Grandal is there, I'm probably going to pass on him and wait for a catcher to come up later in the draft. But as far as ranking catchers, I think you got to put him at least in the top 5. All right, so we're going to move on to our 6 through 10 guys. And so, Vince, why don't you go ahead and start us up there? And I got to say, I like your number 6 selection right out of the gate.
Dalton Varsho is one of those interesting guys. Again, he's been playing outfield most of the time. I wonder if he's even going to lose that catcher eligibility at some point. But I had to put him there just because he's there every day. He should be there every day. I've got Mitch Garver, number 7 from Texas. Again, maybe a little bit underachieving in past years. Hopefully a change of scenery will help him. Stevenson from Cincinnati, he's going to get a lot of opportunity. He's going to hit the ball well. And I believe he has multi-position eligibility
He's
as well.
qualified at first, too, Vince.
Yeah. And so is JT from Philly. But Grandal at number 9. Grandal is my favorite catcher out there. But as a fantasy value, I had him higher in past years. I've dropped him down a little bit. He does create some unique things. I love the stuff that Dan said about him there with the switch hitter and things like that as well. I just feel like he's kind of
All right, so Dan, take it away.
Yeah, Dalton Varsho is a guy that I looked at him and he didn't excite me in the slightest. And most of the guys down here, 6 through 10, none of them really excited me. But I think leaving him off might have been a little too far. But he's not a guy that I'm going to go out and target. Everyone else here does. Everyone else I have excites me a little more. Wilson Contreras, we've seen what he can do. Obviously, the lineup is not what it used to be. But he hit the ball on the ground a lot last year. So if he can revert back to hitting the ball in the air more, his stats will probably come back up. Tyler Stevenson, I didn't realize how good he was, probably because he's playing in Cincinnati. And why would anyone watch the Reds, especially this upcoming year? But 6th in Rookie of the Year, and someone has to drive in runs. Like they're going to score runs, and someone has to drive them in. And Stevenson's probably the best bet in that lineup. Keeper Ruiz, I know I talked up Adley Rutschman, but he's only played 31 games, and he wasn't as highly touted as Rutschman, but he is good. But he's also in a really bad lineup, like you both said. And then the last 2 guys would probably be 2 guys you could almost platoon. Omar Narvaez, really good against right-handed pitching, and Mike Zunino, really good against left-handed pitching. Narvaez has a 400-point gap in his OPS against righties versus lefties, and Zunino actually has a 650-point gap between his OPS against lefties and his OPS against righties. So if you can get Zunino against a lefty, you get him into the lineup. But because there aren't many lefties, Zunino kind of misses out and is on the wrong end of a platoon there in Tampa.
Yeah, I have to say, Vince, that because you're talking about watching spring training. Well, if you watch the Diamondbacks, you will see Dalton Varsho in center field.
Yeah,
and so I think that's where he's going to be most of the season, is out there in center field, or at least in the outfield. At least because we're in the ESPN league. When you start a season with eligibility, you keep it the whole season. So that's not a worry that we have to have. And so he's going to maintain that catcher eligibility all season, even if he never takes a step behind there. I think he will, but if a player is good enough to be, and he made a highlight catch out there in center field. So I think he's going to be in their lineup. And that's the kind of guy that I'm looking for. Is like I was saying, put somebody in the catcher spot and just leave him there. because I don't believe in having two catchers, fantasy catchers. There's not two if you have 20 catchers in fantasy baseball, there's not 20 worth even discussing. So I'm just going to have one and let him run it unless one of them gets hurt. I like Ruiz. I know he's in a lighter lineup, but he's got Soto with him. And so I think he's a young guy. He's going to be in their lineup quite often. So I'm gonna put him at number 7, Mitch Garver over in Rangerland. And he was a guy that really started off last season really well, got hurt. And so if he can maintain his health this year, and they'll probably DH him too, quite a bit. So I like him in the lineup. I'm surprised, Vince, that you didn't talk about Omar Navarra. I like the Milwaukee lineup, and so he's going to be there. And let me see. He played 123 games a year ago, and so he's going to be in the lineup quite often. I'll take a catcher that'll be in the lineup 123 games a season, so I like him. And then, we talked about Stevenson already. Like you said, Dan, somebody in that lineup is going to have to hit the baseball, and it's going to follow him to be in their middle of their lineup. And if you can get a guy that's hitting, 3, 4, and, he's worth checking into, he's got fantasy relevance that way. And so those are my guys that round out my top 10. So Vince, what do you see in our top 10 list? Anything stand out?
Yeah, Narvaez, I love Omar Narvaez. As a Brewer fan, I absolutely love him to death. I thought they played Manny Pena too often last year. This year, it's Severino. Pedro Severino is the backup catcher. So I'd like to think they're not going to play Severino as much as they played Manny Pena last year, which should help Omar Narvaez, but I'm not sold on the fact that that's what they're going to do. I feel like Narvaez is going to play about 2/3 of the games. And again, at a catcher spot, if I've got two, and we were talking before we came on air, me and Dan were talking, last year I was happy to have Narvaez and Pena, and just whichever one was playing, I'd plug in. But if I'm going to have a guy that's only going to play 2/3 of the games, I need, I'm going to have a second catcher. I don't like to have nothing come from somebody. I don't like to have a position just blank. And Dan, you mentioned that you're okay with not having a catcher in if they're not playing. I don't like that. It's not my strategy. And so for that reason, Narvaez is lower on the list for me, but I absolutely love him. When he plays, he's very solid at the position, gives you offense, and he's not going to hurt you very often.
So, Dan, what's your impression of our list?
I like them both. They're all guys I looked at, Mitch Garver, Sean Murphy, guys that I considered, and you guys just missed. And if they finish, I wouldn't be surprised if after 4, no one really excited me. So, once the top 4 catchers go off the board, you should be waiting until, almost
around
200
20
overall to be taking these other guys.
I definitely agree with that. So, any player, let's say, because we've talked about value guys, so I guess we got to do it here as well. And so, Vince, any players that you see stand out as being a value?
Yeah, I got 2 of them. San Francisco's Joey Bart. He did not come in and do what everybody was thinking he was going to come in and do. But I got to think another year under his belt, he's going to come out better. And he's a guy that people are afraid of. They're not going to go after him like they did last year. I had people drafting him last year pretty high for where he was. And so I like him. I like the value that you can get for Joey Bart this year. But again, he's kind of unproven. You're not going to know what you're going to get until you see it happen. The other guy likes Tucker Barnhart, the former Cincinnati catcher. He's in Detroit now. Opportunity there in Detroit to come out and put up some decent numbers. Again, these are guys that I'm looking at really late in the draft, or maybe even Tucker Barnhart might even be a waiver wire pickup early in the year if he starts going off early. But those are the 2 guys I like. Max, is it Stassi? I forget how you say his name. For the Angels. He's batting 5th, so he's going to have plate appearances this year as well, and a pretty solid, okay LA lineup. So I like him too, just because of where he's batting. I'm a big plate appearance guy for catchers. If they're going to bat a lot, I like them better than if they're not going to play a lot.
So Dan, who do you have as your value?
Well, Joey Bart is like one of the guys I had as a value too. So someone has to catch, and Joey Bart was picked high enough to where whether he hits or not, he's gonna get the at bats. He's got big shoes to fill with Buster Posey, but he's a guy that was highly rated in the draft, highly rated coming through the system. Struggled now that he's made the big league roster, but he's certainly going to have the chance to prove himself early this year. And obviously, I think Rutschman could be a great value when he comes up, which who knows, because obviously MLB teams have no incentive, especially the Orioles have no incentive to bring up really good and talented players because then they'd win too many games. But when he does come up, he will help the Orioles win games, and he is a really good player.
So one of the guys that I have as my value is the old man, Yadier Molina. They have him ranked as the number 20th catcher, okay, number 360th overall in player rankings. He's a guy that you can wait all the way to the end of your draft and get him, and he's going to be in the lineup most games, even though it is his final season. I've ridden him the last couple of years on my team. Like I said, you can put him, he'd play 5 days a week. And so if I can get a player that's 360th overall, I think I'm doing pretty well. And so he's the one guy that I have as my value. So anybody that you have, let's go over to Dan, that you're not drafting, even if you need a life preserver.
I think at least where he's valued is Dalton Varsho. I didn't have him on my list, which again probably a little extreme, but it just didn't excite me. Like I knew he was there. I knew he played for the Diamondbacks, but I couldn't believe that he was ranked as highly as he was. Because even if you're playing for the Diamondbacks, if you're doing well, you tend to hear about guys that are outperforming what they were expected to do. And Dalton Varsho is just not a guy that makes me think, oh, top 5 catcher. So he's a guy that I'm going to be avoiding at least at his current value.
All right. So Vince, who do you have as hands off? Vince, are you frozen? I think Vince is frozen over there. So until he comes back to us, we're going to switch over and we're going to talk about some players, Dan, that we think now that we're within 2 weeks of the season starting. Who do we have as far as who do we think that we ranked maybe lower than we should have? And now we think that if we've seen some at-bats and things like that, who are some of the players that you think that if you were to do it over again, that you would rank higher than you did a couple weeks ago?
Well, Justin Verlander's one. I think he maybe was mentioned on the starting pitcher episode we did. But obviously coming off Tommy John surgery, he's not a spring chicken anymore. He's up in his late 30s. But he's thrown 5 innings or so here in spring training, and they've looked good. So, it's going to take him a while to ramp up and you get back to the Verlander of old. But he's a guy that certainly looks like he could get back to being one of the premier pitchers in baseball. Another guy is Chris Bryant, and that's only because he moved to the Rockies. And anyone that goes to Coors Field immediately should get bumped up. And he's going to hit a lot of home runs, probably set a new career high for home runs, even in a bad offense. He's going to play 81 games at Coors Field, and that is certainly a value. Another guy, I brought him up on the Middle Infielders episode, is Bobby Witt Jr. And again, you don't know when he's going to come up, but he should be the starting shortstop for the Royals on opening day because he certainly has the talent to do that. He's a 5-tool player, plays a premium defensive position, and he hits the ball really, really far. He's hit 2 home runs in spring training. Both of them looked like they were well over 430 feet. And he's a guy that should play 150 games this year, but probably will not, unfortunately.
All right, Vince. So who are a couple of players that you have that you think when you first did your rankings, you're like, but now you're like, hey, this guy is going to be the man?
I don't know if I'd put them all that way. Chris Bryant definitely is on that list. I'd put him higher than
He's
I had
on
him.
My list too.
Trevor Story's another one. Now that he's gaining second base eligibility, that's going to add value. And I already had him, I think, at 6, so I move him up a little bit. Josh Donaldson, though, I had him on my do not draft list when he was at Minnesota. Then he got traded to the Yankees, and I'm more in on Josh Donaldson now. And I like the value he can give. He still wouldn't be in my top 10 necessarily, but he's definitely a guy now that I'm looking at moving up my board a little bit, and looks like a guy that I'd be willing to go after now, just because of where he is, better situation.
All right, so I got to agree with you about both of you about Chris Bryant. He's on my list. Ronald Acuna, we've already discussed him in length. So a guy that, Dan, that I have on my list is Rhys Hoskins, of course, your Philadelphia Phillies. And he's going to hit right in the middle of that potent lineup. He's healthy right now. That's been the question about him. So I have him moving up on my rankings as far as first base. And one player that I want to bring up to both of you, because when I put out the article, when we talked about second base and shortstop, I went ahead, put it out there, and published it and everything else. And one of the guys that all three of us left off our list was Corey Seeger of the hometown Texas Rangers. And we got castigated because none of us had him on our list. None of us. And he asked, well, where's he? I'm like, well, I like my list better. He didn't like that answer. So what do you guys either one of you think about Corey Seager heading into the season?
I've got him, in that 11, 12, 13 range. He didn't make my top 10.
What I had too, about 11.
He's not far off. I mean, he's right there. Yeah. And the way I looked at it was I wasn't going to put both him and Semien up there. I didn't feel like that was good for me, so I didn't do that. But I mean, I'm not saying he's going to have a bad season. I just think that position is stacked.
It really is. And that's kind of my answer. Well, Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll echo what you both said. He was right there in serious consideration to be in the top 10, and because he's a really good hitter, and he's been a good hitter since he came up and stuck at shortstop, which not a lot of people thought he could do.
Yeah. But that hurts him because as we talked about, shortstop is the deepest position right now in baseball, and so there's no dishonor at being number 11. I mean,
and hey, moving the Globe Life, it's not a good move.
Helpful.
I know Dodger Stadium's not the most hitter friendly park in the world, but that new stadium the Rangers are playing, that's not a place that is friendly to.
I've actually been to that stadium, and I have to agree with you, Dan. So, all right. So quickly, a couple players that we ranked high and think, maybe not so much. Let's start with you, Dan.
Well, the obvious one is Fernando Tatis. He breaks his wrist.
Vince and I talked about him significantly last week. So
yeah, and the scary thing is when he was asked, if he heard it in his motorcycle accident, he said, "Oh, which one?"
Which one?
So you almost move him down in everything because now you're never certain how many games he's going to play, and I know he loves baseball, but he clearly loves life too. So he's a guy that now is very untrustworthy in terms of fantasy lineups because he's been hurt. We talked about it on the shortstop show, and now he's proved it. I didn't want to be right, but unfortunately I was. And I don't think the broken wrist was really what I was concerned about, but it's happened. And unfortunately you have to move him down for it.
I must agree with that. And, are you still beating the drum of drafting him still relatively high, Vince?
Not as high. No, he's got to drop. I mean, when's he going to play again? It's going to be a few months. When he comes back, how's he going to be? I still like him. If I can get him at a decent value, I'm still going to take him and stash him. But no, I mean, you just can't. He's not like Acuna where he's going to be there.
Right.
He's out for a while. So sadly, no, he definitely has to drop down on the list for sure. The other guy I have is Altuve. I had him number 3 as a second baseman, and I'm not dropping him far, but I'm probably knocking him down a couple notches. Just don't like what I'm hearing out of the team right now, and they don't want him to bat leadoff. So He'll still bat high in the order, but that scares me a little bit when your manager's saying, hey, we're trying to get him out of the number one spot. Well, now he's going to have a new role or different situation, and how will he perform, all that kind of stuff. So I would drop him down a couple spots, but overall, I like my rankings, so I'm pretty happy with them.
All right, so real quick, a couple guys I have are pitchers. One's Zach Gallen of Arizona. They're talking about he has shoulder issues. I'm not drafting a pitcher that has shoulder issues. It's just not going to happen. Chris Sale is another guy. He has a stress fracture in his right rib cage. That's not good, and he's always been hurt. So I'm jettisoning him, and so neither one of those two guys are going to be anywhere on my roster coming up. And speaking of rosters, Vince, we're going to take a couple minutes here, I believe, and go ahead and establish our draft order. So you are the draft order master. So take us away.
All right. So here's the deal. We got a 10-man league. We're going to be using this league all year long in the fantasy show as we talk about ads and pickups and talk about different things with it. 9 of the 10 are belly up guys. The 10th one is my dad, who I guess technically is a belly up guy. He's on my
belly
show.
Up. Oh, yeah.
So you got myself, you got Kevin, you got Dan, we got Timothy Farmer, Mike Brown, co-founder of Belly Up Sports,
Okay.
Zach Martin, Nathan Newen, Tom Matheny, my dad, Dale Stover, and then Noah Berger, all on there in the league. All right, so here's how we're going to do it. I was trying to think about the easiest way to do this without anybody saying you cheated. So here's what we're going to do. I numbered the names 1 through 10. You guys are going to pick the number. I'll show you who's on the number, and that's how we're going to set the order. Now, do you guys want to do it 10 through 1 or 1 through 10?
Let's go 10 through 1. What do you think, Dan?
All right.
All right, we'll go 10.
That's what we're going to do.
All right,
So,
Dan, so you go ahead and call the number first.
pick a number 1 through 10, Dan.
Let's take lucky number 7. Gets the pick
Lucky
10.
number 7. So here is number. Can you see that? You can't see that.
No, can't.
There's a 7 on it.
There
There
it
it is.
is. I see it.
Seven.
All right,
There's a 7.
It is co-founder Belly Up Sports, Mike Brown.
That's not good for me.
He is number 10. Dan made him number. Hey, I like that 10 spot. Picking
I do
10 and
too.
11.
I do
in the
too. I
snake
got to
draft.
say, because you get 2 picks in the top 11, so you got to like that. Let's
All
go.
right.
I'm gonna pick number 2.
Number 2, the deuce goes to yours truly, Vince Stover. You
Okay,
can't-
number 9.
It says Vince. So Vince is number 9. All right, Dan, 1 through 10.
Let's go number 10.
Number 10 is Zach Martin. He co-hosts a show on the Belly Up Sports Network. All right, very good. Next one, Kevin.
All right, let's go with the big number 1.
Numero uno goes to Noah Berger. Berger. I don't know how to say his name, but Noah right there is our picking number. Let's see. That's number 10, 9, 8, 7. All right. Next up.
Let's go number 5.
Number 5, Tom Matheny, I think is how you say that, is there. And he is number 5. So congratulations.
All right, so let's go ahead and go number 3 with this one.
Number 3, Tim Farmer is number 3. All right, he's picking 4th. All right, here we go. So we got numbers 4, 6, 8, and 9 left.
We'll go number 9.
Number 9 is my dad, Dale Stover. He'll pick.
We're not. This is not good. Got a couple members of this show still left. We're gonna get some messages.
All right, Kevin, you got 4, 6, or 8.
Let's go with number 8.
Number 8 is Dan D'Amico.
All right.
There you go. You're picking 3rd, Dan. All right, Dan. Number 4 or number 6?
We'll do number 6.
Number 6 is Nathan Newen. That means
All
the
right.
number 1 overall pick goes to Kevin Wilson of
Yep.
the Belly Up
I want to
Fantasy
go on record
Baseball.
right now and saying that this was totally above board. There was no underhandedness stuff going on, no slush payments, no under the table stuff, nothing.
So, Kevin, with your first overall pick, now you got something to think about for the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
Nathan Newen, you're basically on the board.
Actually, that's next week. That's 1 week from today, man.
Sunday. Yeah.
And just so everybody that's watching knows, we go up live 1 hour earlier.
Yep.
Next Sunday, and than we do here, so we have enough time to do the draft and everything else. So that's going to be 7:00 Eastern, 6 my time.
And Kevin, we will not be on Belly Up TV next week because of the time situation. So we'll be on Belly Up
Okay,
YouTube.
so I'm going to
Yeah, Belly Up YouTube, Belly Up Fantasy Twitter, and Belly Up Fantasy Facebook is what we'll be on next week. Then we'll be back on Belly Up TV the following week as we get into the rest of the season.
All right, so to recap, so Dan, you are what, number 3? Is that what it was?
Yes.
I'm picking third. I'm okay with that.
Okay, and Vince, you were
number 9.
Number 9, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Tatis will still be there.
Yep, you're probably right about that. So, since I got the number 1 pick, I think that if you don't take Ohtani, then maybe it's shame on me. So, that's something I really have to think about right there. So, with the number 3 pick, Dan, what do you think you're looking at? Are you looking at offense? Are you looking at pitching? What are you looking at?
Well, I think I'm definitely going to have to pick one of the outfielders, and I might go home team. Who knows? I might go Bryce Harper. MVP. It might be the pick there. It makes it easier because my first thought was Juan Soto, but that's not fun, especially when the Nationals are playing the Phillies.
Well, we're talking about fantasy. Allegiance goes out the window. That's first thing that's first lesson you need to learn when you're playing fantasy. So allegiance means nothing. So
what we'll
number
do,
9, who do you think you'd look at?
That's so hard because you have no idea what the other guys are going to go with. It is legitimately best guy available, highest guy on the. I've got guys that I like, guys that should be there at 9, but somebody goes, off the wall pick early on. If they go to their favorite team, maybe we have a Rockies fan and he goes Chris Bryant at like number 7 or something. You're going, oh my goodness. So now all of a sudden someone drops. You just don't know. That's one of the first things we're going to do when we start the draft, Kevin, is we're going to ask everybody what team they cheer for. So we can kind of, as it goes on, we can start to see if guys are picking their team or what's going on. I'm guilty of that. There's some good Brewers out there too. You're talking about Woodruff and Burns with the pitchers, how high do you take those guys? Who else, who knows,
and
man.
So,
number 9.
there are going to be comments as the picks are being made too. So you must be ready for that. So, all right.
So the order real quick, Kevin, Nathan, Dan, Dale, Tim, and then Tom, Noah, Zach, Vince, and Mike round out the 10 teams there. And we'll get that up on the ESPN site. Get us put in and off we go, man. Next week, the draft. It's crazy.
That's going to be great. So, Dan, just tell us real quick where we can find you before we run out of time.
Well, first, I had Harper and Zach Wheeler last year on my fantasy teams. Not too bad, by the way. MVP, Cy Young runner-up. But you can find me on Twitter at DanDomingo14. Phillies, Harper hit 2 home runs today, and I was very excited about it. So if you like, because now there's going to be a lot of offense for the Phillies and a lot of bad bullpen and bad defense. So it's going to be a roller coaster when the Phillies are playing. Also, follow Belly Up Baseball on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere on social media. They do a great job with it.
All right, Vince, we know you're everywhere, but just specify where exactly you are.
Twitter and Instagram at Sports Stove, and then the Sports Stove podcast comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday, Friday, and next Monday is our Major League Baseball preview episode. So we did the East for tomorrow. We'll do the Central on Friday, and we'll do the West next Monday. And then our Wednesday episode is the local hour where we focus on Eastern Kentucky University athletics. And we have interviews right now. We're trying to finish and get it locked down, but we should be having the baseball coach on Wednesday as well. They've won 8 straight. They're doing great in the conference and started off really hot in the conference. Today, at one point they were down, I think it was 10-3, and they ended up winning the game. So they've been looking really good. So we'll hopefully have Coach Prothrow on again on Wednesday.
Well, that's awesome. So you can always find me on Twitter at Kevin62 WILSEA. Always find me on the Belly Up Fantasy website. And so everyone, that's what we have for today. Make sure you join us next Sunday for a live fantasy draft. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome, and we'll see you next week.